A Roman legion did not vanish in Britain because history had nothing to say. It vanished because the surviving record says just enough to become dangerous. In York, behind museum glass, there is a Roman stone that should have ended the mystery. It records that in AD 107 and 108, Legio IX Hispana, the Ninth Legion was still alive, still organized, still building inside Roman Britain, not remembered as a dead unit, not preserved as legend, active, official, imperial. And then the certainty breaks. No confirmed battlefield, no recovered eagle, no mass grave, no ancient historian giving the final scene. Only fragments, a carved inscription, stamped tiles, a young soldier's tombstone, and one object far away near Nijmegen that makes the famous story much harder to believe. The easy version says the Ninth marched north into Scotland and disappeared into the mist. But the evidence points to something stranger. By the end, the question will not simply be, where did the Ninth Legion go? It will be this. What happened on the northern edge of Roman Britain that Rome never clearly explained? Begin in York. Before medieval walls, Viking streets, railway lines, and tourists, this was Eboracum, one of the most important Roman military bases in Britain. The fortress stood near the river Ouse, at the point where Rome tried to make its northern occupation permanent. Wood became stone. Marching camps became fortresses. Occupation became architecture. And the Ninth Legion left its clearest final footprint there. The inscription, now catalogued as Rib 665 records, work on a gate of the York fortress under Emperor Trajan. The name is precise, Legio IX Hispana. The date is precise, AD 107 to 108. That matters because legends usually begin where evidence ends. The legend says the Ninth crossed beyond Roman control, was destroyed by northern tribes, and left behind only a lost eagle and a silence Rome could not bear to explain. It is a powerful image, a column of soldiers disappearing into rain, shields sinking into marsh and heather, the eagle gone forever. But the real mystery is not whether that story is dramatic. It is whether it is true. Because the Ninth did not begin as a ghost. It was one of Rome's hard instruments of power. A legion was not just an army. It was a moving city. Infantry, cavalry attachments, engineers, surveyors, clerks, doctors, blacksmiths, pay records, standards, punishments, roads, drainage systems, fortresses, and supply chains. When Rome planted a legion in a province, it was not only sending soldiers. It was sending Rome. The Ninth was associated with the occupation of Britain after Emperor Claudius launched the permanent conquest of the island in AD 43. Britain mattered to Claudius because it offered glory. An island at the edge of the known world, a place Julius Caesar had touched but never held. For Rome, the invasion was military action, imperial theater, and political display all at once. But Britain was not a stage that stayed quiet. In AD 60 or 61, the province erupted. Boudica, queen of the Iceni, led one of the most devastating revolts Rome faced in Britain. The ancient sources are Roman, and that must be remembered. We do not have Boudica's own testimony. We do not have the voices of the people whose land, wealth, and dignity had been pulled into the machinery of empire. But even through Roman writing, the scale of violence is unmistakable. Camulaginum, modern Colchester, was attacked and burned. This was not just a town. It was a Roman colony, a settlement of veterans, and a symbol of occupation. At its heart stood the Temple of Claudius, a building that told the conquered people exactly what Rome expected them to honor. When the revolt came, that symbol became a trap. The Ninth Legion, commanded by Quintus Petilius Cerealis, marched to relieve the town. Tacitus records the result with brutal simplicity. The Britons destroyed the infantry. Cerealis escaped with cavalry, but the foot soldiers were slaughtered. The Ninth survived. But survival is not the same as strength. The unit had to be reinforced from Germany. It had already been broken once on British soil by a revolt that Roman rule itself had helped provoke. That is the first crack in the familiar legend. The Ninth was not a perfect legion later erased in one mysterious northern disaster. It was a formation with old wounds. And Rome kept sending it north. 2 decades later, during the campaigns of Governor Agricola, the Ninth appears again at the edge of catastrophe. Tacitus, who was Agricola's son-in-law and not a neutral observer, describes a night attack by Caledonian forces during operations in northern Britain. He calls the 9th the weakest of the British legions. That phrase matters. It may mean under strength. It may mean exhausted. It may mean vulnerable because of position. It may reflect old losses, recent strain, or the way Tacitus shaped his story. But whatever the exact meaning, the scene he gives us is dark. A Roman camp in the north. Ditches. Ramparts. Watchfires. Armor close to sleeping men. Then noise in the dark. The enemy inside the defenses, fighting inside the perimeter before Agricola's relief force arrived and prevented disaster. The 9th survived again. But by now a pattern had formed. Twice near destroyed, twice kept alive, twice marked by Britain. By the early 2nd century, the 9th was still at York, still building, still pressing its name into the province. Tile stamps marked LEG IX HISP across northern sites, York, Aldborough, Malton, Carlisle, and other points connected to the military landscape of Roman Britain. A stamped tile is not dramatic. It does not give us a last stand, but it shows manufacture, supply, infrastructure, and routine. It shows a legion trying to make permanence visible. Every tile said the same thing. We are here. And then permanence failed. After AD 108, the ground gives way. The 9th does not appear in a secure British record of destruction. It does not appear in a formal record of transfer. It does not appear in an honorable disbandment notice that solves the problem neatly. It simply fades from the surviving record, where we most expect it to remain. Around AD 120, Legio VI Victrix, the 6th Legion, begins appearing at York. The 9th had founded the fortress. The 6th replaced it. That replacement is not a small detail. Legions were imperial institutions. They did not leave major fortresses by accident. If a new legion held York, something had changed. The 9th had been moved, reduced, broken, disbanded, destroyed, or reorganized in a way the surviving record does not fully explain. If you feel the moment where solid stone turns into silence, type York in the comments. Then the story becomes more complicated. Near Nijmegen, in the Netherlands, at a place called Uig, an object was found bearing the marking LEG HISP IX. It is usually dated around AD 125. That date comes after the last secure British inscription from York. This single object does not prove the entire 9th Legion survived intact and relocated to the Lower Rhine. Scholars are careful about that, and they should be. It may represent a detachment. It may reflect equipment or supply movement. It may preserve a connection to the Legion without proving where the full unit stood. But it does prove one important thing. The simple version, the 9th marched north from York, entered Scotland, and was completely annihilated before AD 125, cannot easily account for a 9th Legion mark appearing near Nijmegen after the supposed disaster. The legend starts to crack, and much of that legend is modern. Rosemary Sutcliffe's 1954 novel, The Eagle of the 9th, gave the mystery a shape that millions could remember. A son searching beyond Hadrian's wall for the lost eagle of his father's destroyed legion. It was honest historical fiction, not deception. But fiction has power where evidence has gaps. It gave us a lost eagle, a lost father, a lost legion, a journey into the unknown. That is what stories do. They turn uncertainty into pursuit. They give a clean emotional form to an unresolved historical problem. And in this case, the fictional version became so vivid that it hardened in popular memory. But history is not obligated to satisfy us. There is no confirmed battlefield where the 9th died, no recovered eagle, no destruction layer that turns the legend into forensic certainty. No ancient historian says, plainly and securely, here the 9th was destroyed. Instead, the evidence gives us something more frustrating. A disappearance from one place, a possible trace in another, and an emperor arriving in Britain at exactly the moment Rome's northern frontier changed forever. In AD 122, Emperor Hadrian came to Britain. That alone should make us pause. Emperors did not cross the empire casually. Hadrian was not Claudius chasing conquest theater. His reign was defined by inspection, consolidation, and boundaries. Across the Roman world, he cared not only about what Rome could take, but about what Rome could hold. In Britain, the north had become the problem. The result was Hadrian's Wall. Modern visitors often see the wall as a monument of Roman strength, and it was. Stone, turf, forts, mile castles, roads, gates, and military administration stretched across northern England. English heritage dates the beginning of the wall to Hadrian's visit in AD 122. But a wall is also a confession. Walls are built when open control becomes too costly. They say, beyond this point, power must be managed differently. Hadrian's Wall did not mean Rome was weak in a simple sense. Rome remained organized, wealthy, violent, and dangerous. But it did mean Rome had learned something about Britain. The north could not simply be swallowed. It had to be contained. And in the same approximate moment, the ninth disappears from Britain's secure record, and the sixth appears at York. Some historians argue that the ninth may have been defeated and disbanded in connection with warfare in Britain around AD 122 or shortly after. Nick Hodgson has made that case in Britannia. More recently, Eric Grofstall has argued for the possibility of a wider Hadrianic security crisis, connecting frontier disruption, possible signs of crisis elsewhere, and the ninth's absence. These are serious arguments, but they are not proof. That is the historian's trap. The storyteller wants the missing line to mean death. The scholar has to ask whether it might mean lost paperwork, a partial transfer, a detachment, a later defeat somewhere else, or administrative decisions that were never carved into stone. The emotional pull of the ninth is strongest when we stop saying legion, as if it were a chess piece. In York, another stone survives, the tombstone of Lucius Ducius Rufinus, a standard-bearer of the 9th Legion from Vienne in what is now southern France. He was 28 years old. 28. A standard-bearer was not just another soldier. He carried identity, unit pride, the thing men looked toward in fear, confusion, dust, and rain. His tombstone does not solve the mystery. It does something quieter. It reminds us that the lost legion was made of individual lives. The phrase "the 9th Legion" is clean. Too clean. Behind it were men who expected pay, food, orders, retirement, danger, and perhaps a future. Archaeology lets one of them step briefly out of the dark, then sends us back to the silence. And the silence is the point. Rome was excellent at remembering victories, triumphs, arches, coins, columns, titles, conquered peoples shone beneath the feet of power. But Rome did not remember every defeat with the same enthusiasm. Some disasters were too large to hide. Others, especially on distant frontiers, could be softened, ignored, reframed, or lost under the ordinary collapse of ancient record survival. This does not prove a conspiracy. It means empires manage memory. They remember what strengthens the story they tell about themselves. They leave other things unresolved, simplified, or buried under later narratives. The 9th sits in exactly that dangerous space, far from Rome, close to an unstable frontier, important enough to matter, but not preserved clearly enough to explain. So what are the possible endings? The first is the famous one, a British disaster. The 9th, already weakened and stationed in a dangerous frontier zone, was destroyed or crippled in northern conflict. Rome replaced it with the 6th at York, built the wall, and allowed the memory to fade into silence. This fits the violence of the frontier. It gives Hadrian's Wall a darker shadow. But it does not easily explain the Nijmegen evidence. The second possibility is transfer. The 9th did not die in Britain. It was moved elsewhere, perhaps to the Rhine, and later met its end in another conflict whose records are incomplete. This explains why a 9th Legion mark appears near Nijmegen around AD 125. It reminds us that legions were imperial assets, not local monuments. But it does not explain why the 9th vanishes so completely from later secure legion lists. The third possibility is messier. And because it is messier, it may be closer to reality. The 9th may not have had one clean ending. Parts of it may have moved. Parts may have been detached. Parts may have been lost. The unit may have been weakened, reorganized, merged, or disbanded after a crisis that did not leave the kind of evidence we crave. In this version, the 9th disappears not like a torch blown out, but like a signal breaking apart. A name at York, A stamp in clay. A tombstone. A mark near Nijmegen. Then nothing certain. Strongest responsible interpretation is not that we can solve the mystery. We cannot. The surviving evidence shows that the ninth was active at York in AD 107 to 108. It shows that the sixth replaced it at York around the Hadrianic period. It shows that some object connected to the ninth appears near Nijmegen around AD 125. It shows that the legion had already suffered badly in Britain before its final disappearance from the secure record. What it does not show is the final scene. No battlefield. No eagle. No last order. Hadrian's wall still crosses northern England. Tourists walk it now. Cameras frame it against hills. Museums explain forts, mile castles, gates, and Roman engineering. But through the story of the ninth, the wall changes. It becomes more than a monument of power. It becomes a warning line. Rome did not leave Britain when the ninth disappeared. It stayed for centuries. It adapted, fortified, recruited, taxed, and built. But something about the northern frontier forced Rome to stop imagining Britain as an easy extension of imperial will. The empire could carve its name into stone and still vanish from the next page. That is why the mystery survives. Not because we know nothing. Because we know just enough. Enough to see the ninth at York. Enough to know it had suffered before. Enough to watch another legion take its place. Enough to find a possible trace across the sea. Enough to doubt every simple answer. The stone in York still speaks. But after it speaks, Rome falls quiet. And somewhere between that carved gate, Hadrian's wall, and a mark near Nijmegen, the Ninth Legion still marches through the dark, not as an army anymore, but as a warning. Even Rome could lose a legion and not know how to tell the story. But the ninth was not the only story Rome left unfinished in Britain. In the next episode from Roman Britain, we go north of the wall, to the peoples Rome tried to contain but never fully conquered. Subscribe, and we will cross the frontier together.